Georgia lawyers Bob and Irreverent D talk law. Listen up for stories about how things really happen in our legal system. On today's episode, Bob and Irreverent D dip into the mailbag to answer your personal injury law questions. Now, sit back and take a listen as Bob and Irreverent D talk law.
Put that coffee down.
Coffee's for closers.
Coffee's for closers.
And I say,
Welcome
Always
to the
be
Bob
closing.
and Irreverent D Talk Law Podcast. I am Bob Benjamin O. Benson. Those are my initials.
personal injury attorney extraordinaire.
I'm extraordinarily a personal injury attorney.
You do a damn good job.
I mean, we try.
You do
We
a
do.
damn good job.
We take care of our people.
Yeah.
And I'm joined, as always, by Irreverent D, Dwayne Singleton. Excellent trial attorney. Goes to trial a lot.
Too much.
All the time. Welcome to the podcast. We're here today talking about all of the questions that get asked in any kind of case. We've done one episode on criminal defense matters, and now it's time.
It's your turn.
It's my turn. I'm under the microscope. I'm under the gun. I've not seen these questions before.
We got it.
I am the great Sarmac.
I
am
can't see
ready.
them. I can't see them now.
You
so
can't.
we'll do this.
All right.
All right. So these
Let's
are questions designed for a personal injury attorney like yourself.
All right.
What constitutes a motor vehicle accident? What's a motor vehicle accident?
All right. So the first thing that comes to anyone's mind is two cars collide with each other.
Done.
That's a motor vehicle accident. But it might also include when a car collides with a pedestrian. We
Okay.
think of it as a pedestrian accident, but it involves a motor vehicle. That distinction can be important later when we're talking about insurance coverage. It could also involve a golf cart in certain circumstances. If, for example, you're in Peachtree City,
Right?
Because in Peachtree City, we
They
all use
run you over.
golf carts for transportation. But generally speaking, we think of cars, trucks and cars.
How about if
And
I'm on a bicycle?
if you're on a bicycle and you're hit by a car, it's a motor vehicle accident.
What if I get hit by a tractor trailer truck?
If you're hit by the tractor
Correct.
of a tractor trailer, it's a motor vehicle accident. If you're hit by an errant trailer that's just kind of skidding along,
So if
by
the trailer
itself,
comes loose and
well,
heads down the highway,
yeah, that could be. That's a gray area.
all right.
All right, what's your next question?
What's the first thing I should do after I've had a motor vehicle accident?
So the first thing you really should do is make sure you're okay. You
Makes
look
sense.
around in your environment, see if there are smoke, fire coming from your car or anything like that. And check around for your loved ones. Make sure that everyone's okay. And then the next thing would be to make sure that you're in a safe place. If you're in the middle of traffic, you may not be able to move your car, but you should move yourself.
Right.
You should get yourself out of that because God knows whether you're going to get hit by some person.
So it
who's
could
not
be a
paying enough.
multi.
It could be a multi-accident accident.
Right.
And then the third thing you need to do is a lot of people think the third thing is to start taking pictures. That's not actually what you should do.
Okay.
The third thing you should do is call the police.
Okay.
The police are going to come out and they're going to make notes. They're going to take statements. They're going to draw diagrams for an official report. They may even draw some conclusions as to who is at fault. But at the very least, they need to come out so they can take statements and assess and write down an official report about what happened. That's essentially it. There are a bunch of things that you should do as you go on. But one, make sure you're okay.
When
Make
do
sure
I
you're
call
safe.
you?
You really don't. As much as I want to say, that should be the fourth phone call that you make. In actuality, you need to take care of your own safety and your own health first, right? And so in priorities, you're going to ensure your own safety. Then you're going to call the police so they can do the report. And 3, if you feel like it's an emergency, you need to go to the emergency room.
Now, Dwayne Singleton says I should never talk to the police. In this situation,
You absolutely should talk to the police.
okay.
Tell them what happened. I was standing around. I was sitting in traffic, and all of a sudden, this person hit me, right, or whatever it is.
Not the time to remain silent.
Yeah, not the time to remain silent.
All right. Next question. What type of compensation can I receive from a car accident? How much money am I going to get, Ben?
That's a difficult question to answer, but you can have certain guideposts. One, the compensation that you have, we use a fancy legal term called damages.
Okay.
Your damages include the cost of your medical treatment. It includes your lost time from work if it's excused by a doctor and is reasonable, and it includes your pain and suffering. Now, the first two of those are pretty easy to calculate. We can get a calculator out, we can look at your medical bills, and we can say, oh, how much were they? And we figure that out. Second, usually it's pretty easy to figure out what your lost wages are.
Right.
Because if, for example, you're working and you're earning certain amount of money per hour and you miss 4 hours, you can put that in a calculator and say, okay, well, that's $20 an hour. At 4 hours, that's $800, whatever. $80. I can't, don't ask me to do math. That's why I use a calculator. But the third part is more difficult. And that is because your pain and suffering really, when it really all the way comes down to the mat, is worth what a judge or a jury think it's worth. Now, generally, people, when they're trying to figure out what your pain and suffering is worth, they're going to look for, whether it's a judge or it's a jury member, they're going to look for things that they can calculate as like guidelines, right? And so, generally speaking, if your medical bills were low, you probably weren't hurt that bad. If you didn't miss any time from work and your property damage for your car is pretty low, people would think, they probably weren't hurt that bad. On the other hand, if you have $100,000, $200,000 in medical bills because you had to get life flighted to Grady and stayed in the operating room and had to have emergency surgery, and you're unable to work for 2 years, generally speaking, people will say that's a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. Right. And so it really depends on those things. Like, how bad were you hurt? How bad was the damage? And what does that look like in real numbers?
So when I'm sick, I feel really, really bad. And my wife, she doesn't feel as bad when she's sick.
Do you have
I have more pain and suffering because I suffer more?
That's a real thing. The researchers at Stanford University determined that there is a significant difference between a cold and a man cold. I'm sure of that.
Okay. I'm glad we cleared that up.
Can we pause for just a second?
Sure.
Can we go off the record? Okay.
All right.
So we're back on the record.
On the record.
Okay.
Next question.
Yes.
Who is liable in a multi-vehicle accident? So we got a bunch of cars. They all run into each other. Who's responsible?
Mm-hmm. So the short answer about who's liable is the person who started it. Okay. So if you think about a multi-car accident, it's not as simple as just saying it's multiple car accident, because there are a bunch of different ways it could have happened. What we generally see, though, is two people are stopped, and then a third person hits the second person and knocks that person into the first person. In that circumstance, who would you think is at fault?
The very last person that caused the person
that caused the chain reaction. Yeah. Right? Now, there could be circumstances where more than one person is at fault. Think about the circumstance where one person is stopped, the second person rear ends them, and the third person, not paying attention, rear ends the second person.
Right.
The poor first person has been hit by two different people. Right. And so they're in the unenviable position of having to decide maybe who they should focus more of their energies on. But technically speaking, like if they've been hit by two people, both of those people are responsible to them for their damages.
So let's say I'm behind a chicken truck.
Yep.
Chicken flies off the back, hits my windshield.
What kind of chicken?
Well, the Purdue chickens, they're taking them to the plant.
Okay, I got you. But not a frozen chicken.
No. This is
a live chicken.
Live chicken flies off, hits
live
in front of my car.
Okay. All right.
Bless my windshield. I slam on brakes. The person behind me hits me. The person behind them hits them. What do you do then?
Okay, so the question then is, well, who started it?
I had this case.
It's the chicken or the egg, right? I mean, you did not put me up to that on purpose, right? Okay,
no,
all right.
did not practice this.
So as I look at that, the issue is, okay, well, what started it? What started it was this chicken flying off the back of the truck.
Right.
And then the next question is, well, If that's what started it, somebody did something wrong to let the chicken off the back of the truck.
Yep.
And so what you're looking for is, well, what's the wrong conduct? What is the conduct that led to this happening? And you could guess, right? What's the wrong conduct? Chickens should not be
securing
flying.
your load, right?
Yes, not securing your load. It's not any different than if somebody's driving along in a work van and a ladder
falls off,
and a ladder falls off. The thing that was done wrong was they didn't lash the ladder down, right? The thing with the chicken is we shouldn't have flying chickens going down the road. Now let's set a different nuance to that. What about the flying rock from the gravel truck? Isn't that maybe different?
Well, they try to say it's different. It hits the road, and they told you to stay back 100 feet.
Because there's a big sign,
Right.
There's a big sign that says, "Stay clear, flying rocks." Right? We can't control the flying rocks. Who knows? Like it depends.
They get complicated.
It does get complicated, but we'll get into this later. But if you know that there's a danger, you kind of have a duty to avoid that danger.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Let's see.
Next question.
How long do I have to file a lawsuit after a car accident?
The smart money is on 2 years.
Okay.
The statute in Georgia says you have to file a lawsuit within 2 years of the thing happening. Mm-hmm. And if you file a lawsuit after the 2 years, your case could be dismissed if the defendant raises the statute of limitations in their answer.
Okay.
So the sequence of how that would work is you wait until 5 days after the accident or after 2 years after the accident, and then you file the lawsuit, and then you have the sheriff serve the defendant. The defendant hires an attorney. The attorney looks at it and says, "Good Lord, this did not get filed on time.
Too late.
It's too late." Right? It doesn't automatically happen. What they have to do is file their answer, and with their answer, file a motion that says, "Judge, we want you to dismiss this case because it was filed after the statute." If the defendant gets served and they didn't have a good lawyer, their lawyer wasn't paying attention or something, right? And they didn't raise that defense, then you might skate along.
Get around it.
You might get around it. All right.
What do I do if somebody hits me? And
Before we leave that,
gotcha.
there's one exception.
What do we got?
Don't ever rely on the exception. But if you're in a bind, let's say, for example, that you rear end me in a collision. And the police find you at fault and give you a citation, and you have to go to traffic court to deal with that citation a month later, 2 months later. 2 months after the accident, you plead guilty. Say, "I did it. I agree. I rear-ended him. I was following too closely." You sign and you plead guilty to it, right? That statute of limitations actually extended for that 2 months while your charges were pending.
That's something I learned through you, because I didn't realize if somebody had like a DUI pending and they didn't take care of it for years and years, that they would extend that statute like that.
Yeah. That's true. Now, the opposite part is not true. So let's say we get in a collision and it's a stop sign issue, right? You think I'm supposed to be going second and you go, and I think you're supposed to be going second. I go, and we hit each other, right? And the police issue me a citation, and I think you're at fault, and I sue you 2 years and 2 months after.
But I didn't get a citation.
You didn't get a citation. Right. I did. Turns out I really was at fault.
Right.
But the statute doesn't get extended because if it was me who was found at fault.
Well, that makes sense. It's in your favor.
That's true.
Right.
But one more nuance. If it's a third party and that third party was issued a citation, it extends the statute of limitations for the two of us.
Oh, I did not know that.
I did not know that until I learned it from another lawyer like a year ago. I didn't realize that. Anyways. Okay. Next question.
What do I do if somebody hits me and they don't have insurance?
If somebody hits you with your car.
Yeah.
Okay. Not like socking you on the face.
Not like punching me in the face. That's a different scenario.
Yeah, that is a different scenario. We should talk about that. We should actually talk about both.
Okay.
They don't have insurance. Okay. One, you should have insurance that covers you if somebody hits you and they don't have insurance.
Uninsured motorist.
Underinsured
motorist coverage.
Uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage.
Very important.
It's absolutely important. You should have it. Now,
check your policy.
If you don't have uninsured motorist coverage, that person is still responsible to you for your damages. The question is then more a practical question. Can you get money from that? Right? And that brings us to like, okay, well, Everybody knows, Dwayne, that it is hard to get money from insurance companies, but it is a lot easier to get money from insurance companies than it is to get from people.
Yep.
You can't hardly get money from people. You can get money from insurance companies. But there are other ways that we can kind of look at that, but it does become dicey if they don't have insurance and you don't have uninsured motorist coverage. It may be that there's no pocket to get money from.
I've got an old judgment that is for $18,000, and every time we find them and they get a job and we start to garnish, they quit their job.
I had an investigator check out a defendant one time that didn't have insurance, and my client wanted to know, well, what happens if we want more money than the insurance policy they have, and the investigator came back after having looked at the defendant and said they have a job, but they don't have the kind of job that they would keep if they had a judgment against them.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. How do insurance companies determine who's at fault for an accident?
It's usually they think it's you.
Even if you didn't get the ticket?
Even if you didn't get the ticket. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so
they don't make money just handing out checks.
They don't.
Right.
They don't. The insurance company is going to take several issues into consideration. One, they're going to look at what the police said. You and I both agree what the police say is not binding, but it is influential.
Right.
Right. The second thing they're going to do is they're just going to look at the facts and the circumstances of how it happened. They're going to look at it and say, well, this doesn't make sense, or this does make sense. They have to also listen to their own client, right? So here's a scenario. My client, Jane, was rear-ended by Harold. Harold says that it wasn't his fault. The accident happened because he was distracted by Jane hitting somebody else.
Clever Harold.
Very clever Harold. Very clever Harold. To try to take away the attention from himself. The police believed him.
Nice.
And didn't issue him a citation.
Sweet little Harold will never lie.
Right? Even though he clearly rear-ended my client.
Right.
Right. And so what's going to happen in this case is the insurance company is going to talk to Harold. Harold's insurance company is going to talk to him and say, hey, Jane says that you're at fault for this because you rear-ended her. The damage to your car shows that the front of your car hit the back of her car, which suggests to us as a rear-end collision, right? Unless you're not going to say that she backed into you, right? Or whatever. And Harold's going to say, no, it was her fault because she distracted me, right? The insurance company, they do have to take Harold's statement into consideration, but their policy is going to say, Harold, we do have to take your statements into consideration, but we don't have to abide by them.
Got it.
We can decide that you're at fault, even if you protest and say it's not my fault.
Because if they didn't, they'll be on the hook. They'll have a problem later on, right?
They'll have a problem, right? Now, technically, though, the insurance company does not have a duty. Harold's insurance company does not have a duty to my client. They only have a duty to Harold. No. Last question. How do I handle negotiations with insurance adjusters? They won't pay me anything. Okay. This is assuming you're not a lawyer.
Right.
All right. You absolutely can negotiate with an insurance company on your own case. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay. Now, us lawyers, you'll hear a lot of things in advertising. Don't ever talk to the insurance company. Never. But the reality is, if you have a simple case and you know what the value is,
right,
there's nothing wrong with you negotiating with the insurance company. But the two things that you need to know are, one, who do I have to pay back? And two, what is the value? All right. So the answer to number one is pretty easy to figure out. If you have medical bills, you can look at them and find out how much the balances are. If the hospital has filed a lien on your case, you can know how much that is. That tells you, well, this is who I have to pay from whatever money that I get from the insurance company.
Right.
Understanding that the insurance company for the other driver, they will say words that suggest to you that they're going to pay the hospital bill.
Right.
But they're not. They're going to pay you, and you're going to pay the hospital bill, right? They're going to, this is the fancy term that we use, is indemnify you, right? They're not going to pay the hospital directly. They're not going to pay your chiropractor. They're not going to pay your doctor directly. They're not going to pay your physical therapist directly. They're going to pay you, and you have to pay them. right?
So if they give you $5,000, you got a $10,000 hospital bill.
Right. Then you're really upside down.
Right.
Right. That's like being upside down in your car.
And I also hear like the insurance company said they're not paying on this. They're only authorized to give me $500. That's all they can give. And you're like, no, they have to give whatever a jury tells them they have to give, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ultimately, we hate to have to go all the way to a jury, but ultimately, the insurance company's statement about what they can do and what they can't do, it's not binding on us.
No.
Right? Like what matters is what a judge or a jury says matters.
And I think something else to look out for, because it happens a lot, is that people will call right before the statute's about to run, or maybe even after the statute's run, because they've been dealing with an insurance adjuster.
Mm-hmm.
And the adjuster's like, well, you're still treating. I can't settle this case until you finish going to the doctor.
Right.
And then you let your statute run.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's what you need to hear from me about that. If you're still getting medical treatment at 2 years from when the accident happened, you can no longer handle it yourself.
Right.
Like it is too complicated to handle yourself. If you went to the emergency room and then you had some basic medical treatment like chiropractic or physical therapy, it's simple enough. You can handle it yourself. You have to know those two things. One, who do I owe?
Right.
And two, what is the value? Right.
But if you need to get a life care plan, you probably need a lawyer.
You absolutely, you're way over your head. Right. That is more complicated than you can handle, even if you're whippersnapper smart. It's too much.
It's probably more than your divorce lawyer can handle too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You do need a specialist. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining the Bob and Irreverent D
Thank you for answering
Talk
my questions.
I think I
had more.
I had this feeling that there were tons more. Maybe we should handle them in another episode.
It for you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you giving me the softballs first. Take care, y'all.
Thanks. Like and subscribe.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next time when Bob and Irreverent D talk law.